Well, the hyenas, the coyotes, as they used to say, they're out in force. And because I'm likely not going to be doing a live this weekend, because I got to figure out what's going to happen with the move. And I just got some bad news from one of the vendors, and that really pisses me off. But I got I got wind of something, and I'm not going to cover the project directly because it's getting too much hype on social media. And if you've listened to me here or on the podcast at cryptotalkradio.net, you know that I do not do coverage of anything that's getting too much unreasonable levels of hype on social media because I need to let the dust die down, settle, calm down. Let's let it set. Let's prove it out. And so I'm not doing any coverage. It's not a swag. I'm only targeting one allegation. And at this point, it's only an allegation that was made. But when I say the hyenas, the coyotes are out, I don't want to say wolves because Saitama has not chimed in, but there's this Shido, which apparently was Shido Inu. Never heard of it, didn't care. Not going to cover the Shido. What's important is that I was looking in CoinMarketCap's chat, which I'm becoming more of a fan of their community, and a user made an allegation, a very serious allegation. This is what I want to dig into to either confirm or deny best I can this allegation. Now, here's the caveat. There will be people in the ecosystem for which the token I refer to for this allegation, they're not going to like what I have to say because unfortunately, this community has already introduced some measure of toxicity within themselves. And I told them when I did that swag high level that their greatest asset was community and they needed to keep toxicity out. And unfortunately, from my assessment, given the fact that they attacked me for simply making that statement, it's too late to keep the toxicity out, similar to Luna Classic. So this community that I refer to for which the allegation was made is likely going to attack me in full force, even though what I'm saying is the truth and they can verify it themselves. As such, I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, possibly naively, that people in the ecosystem for the second token for which the allegations were made will listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth and they will go and do research and see what I'm saying is the truth and then make whatever decision that they choose. Because that's the goal here. It's not to tell you what to do or not to do with your money because I can't do that. All I'm doing is talking about the allegation. And again, all I can see it is as an allegation because I don't know that it's true or not. I'm simply going to go and read it literally live right now and tell you what I see as a certified cryptocurrency auditor that I am. So Shido Inu, and on coinmarketcap.com, you can go into their commentary, their community, and there's a message. And the message talks about the self-reported circulating supply is wrong. His user WIS007 makes this allegation. This is back in November. But that user claimed that the, quote, team can print and sell forever. This is similar to like Multiverse Capital, where they're making an allegation of unlimited supply. I'm not here to talk about that directly, not directly. Follow me here. In the responses then, user just someone in crypto says, quote, we do not have Shido, we do not have a minting function. Volt does. Okay, well, that's interesting. Now there's where the wolves are coming out, right? Or the hyenas, not wolves. So now here's where they're coming out. So the allegation is that Shido can unlimited print money, magic internet money, and that it has a limited supply and they can mint eternally. And then this just someone in crypto at Nunya Biz says, quote, well, actually, Volt EU has a minting function. I didn't look into the contract for Volt because, as I said, by and large, I want to see that the community is in good spot because every cryptocurrency that's going to succeed does so when you have a healthy community and you have devs that are humble and they listen to the folks. So I didn't go deep into this, and I certainly didn't go deep into Shido Inu because it's too much hype on social media, but this was an opportunity to do an analysis on both contracts and see who's telling the truth. Is it true that Shido can unlimited print money like, Jerome Powell, or is it true that Volt Inu can print money? Volt Inu went to a V2, I believe it's a V2, and they killed off the supply. They got it down, so the supply has been in a good spot, and the price has been somewhat stable and upward. Shido, I haven't bothered, but since I saw it was Shido Inu before, I see that basically they cheated. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with this because I see they're trying to do something. I'm not going to cover any of that. All I'm talking about here in this quick fast is who's telling the truth and who's lying, who can print money out of control, who actually has minting functions that they can use and exploit. Let's dig into this, shall we? First up, Shido, formerly known as Shido Inu. I took the Binance Smart Chain version of this token, ran it through my favorite tool and should be yours, marketmove.ai. Marketmove.ai came back and gave this a reasonably clean bill of health on its AI-based audit, came back with about an 86 to 89% score, averaged out to 86, but it went as high as 89 points. But basically, they thought it was in a really good spot, thought the contract was really well done, not a lot of whales, not a lot of issues. When looking at the contract, then it didn't see any instance that there was a mint function represented in the contract code that we can tell. However, because ownership is not renounced per se, it means that technically the owner could do some nefarious something, but it does not have a mint function that is found in the contract. So it is not accurate to state that Shido has any sort of minting function, certainly not one that I can see from the contract code. And it, again, got a very good overall score. So that's Shido. I don't see a minting function in Shido. So for Mr. WIS or Mrs. WIS or they, whatever you refer, WIS, it is not accurate to say that Shido has a mint function in the contract that we can currently see. So now let's look at Volt. Volt Emu, specifically the V2 version of Volt Emu. And again, I take the Binance Smart Chain version of the coin token and ran it through marketmove.ai. And marketmove.ai came back with a much lower 67 for its score. The primary issue MarketMove had is actually the contract itself. Well, that's very interesting. Let's see what it was talking about here. There is no mint function that I can see in the contract code for Volt Emu, so it's inaccurate to state that there is a minting function, at least from a contract perspective. However, as with Shido, ownership is not renounced with Volt Emu. Consider, though, Volt Emu is part of the Everrise ecosystem. They are on EverOwn and EverLock. Being on EverOwn means that contracts cannot be changed without the community knowing about it. So despite not being renounced in terms of the code side, meaning that they purposely did not renounce the contract to the zero-based address and remove the owner address, it is covered by EverOwn. So you'd know if there was a contract change that would in some way cause a risk of minting of tokens. Such is not the case as it stands right now. The only other issues that MarketMove saw is around what the owner can do with the actual contract itself with the functions that are available. For example, setting certain addresses. So if they need to change marketing, wallet addresses, that sort of thing, changing fees, taxes, rewards, reflections, those things are built-in functions to the contract themselves. What I'm not sure of, I don't believe so, but what I'm not sure of is whether EverOwn restricts their ability to execute those functions without, quote, checking out the contract. It seemed to me that EverOwn pretty much puts the contract in a state where they're not able to actually do any of the functions directly. So when I say do the functions, normally what happens is you go to, let's say in this case, BSC scan or something, you pull up the contract and you can execute the functions directly from that page if you're the owner. So you connect your address, wallet, and you can execute the functions if it matches the owner. There's other ways to do it, but you can do it from the interface just to see that the functions themselves execute, and you can actually make changes. You can lock a contract. You can do all sorts of things if the contract lets you do it. What I'm not sure is whether or not EverOwn restricts that capability to where they're not able to execute the functions unless they go through the EverOwn checkout process, which would notify the community. Basically, not notify, but the community would have to chime in and approve it. It's kind of like a DAO in a way. So if that's the case, that means that there's no possible way that anything would have changed that would cause a mint on Volt without the community being in part of it and being approved. Now, since I don't see an actual function to do it, I'm going to make the assumption that it's not even possible to do it. So I see Volt Emu has no mint function. That's what that is. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. So in summary, what's really happening here? Let me explain what my theory is about what's happening. My theory is it's a misunderstanding about the word mint. So when you have a supply of tokens, there are different metrics that are given to you when you go to like CoinMarketCap. You'll see total supply, you'll see max supply, and circulating supply. I believe that what we're seeing in this communication is a misunderstanding of the difference between these three, where it's leading people to believe something that isn't really true. When we have a total supply Total supply, and unfortunately, different tools will interpret this differently, but generally speaking, if you use CoinMarketCap as a measure, total supply implies how much supply has been, quote, mined, as in has been made available out there, has been traded at some point, bought, sold at some point, is out there. Because when you get to circulating supply, we should see that the circulating supply matches the total supply if the token is actually getting some positive movement. If there's a bunch of sell-off, the supply sits there, obviously, in liquidity pools or wherever, and it goes out of circulation. So it sits and nobody's buying, selling it. Your total supply then would be higher than your circulating supply. Where I think people are getting confused is max supply. When you create a token, when you build when you quote mint a new token, you declare what is the maximum supply that would ever be possible to create in this token, except that certain of it's made available right away, and that's usually part of your initial liquidity. Certain of it is only made available when that initial pool of tokens has been consumed by people who are buying and selling, or by a burn. So when projects cheat and they do that initial, we burn 50% up front, deep, what they're technically doing is they're cheating, right? Because if you have a max supply, I'm not going to use this one because it's too high. Let's say 1 million for simple numbers purposes only. If you have 1 million in your max supply, that means there could only ever be 1 million ever created under this contract by the restrictions of the contract. If I burn half of it, that means that 500,000 of it will never be made available to circulation. That means the circulating supply cannot exceed 500,000 up to, the circulating supply, whatever it ends up being to the max, which should never exceed 500,000 if that burn was truly a burn. I don't want to confuse you. Just understand that certain burns are not really a burn. So if I have 500,000 and it gets to circulation, what you'll then see is unreasonable pumps. This is what happened with SafeFu. They basically cheated. They declared a max supply of X, and then they burned a percentage of it to create a scarcity, which is how I knew it was going to pump and dump. Because you're going to have people that dump off to take the money, but you don't have enough in terms of people buying in to sustain it, because then the liquidity starts to run out, which is what happened. That's what happened with Libero as well. So I think my theory is people are confusing the different supplies, and they see that the supply, there's a delta between total supply and max supply. What's really happening is that when you need more of it, the contract itself makes more available so that we can increase to get up this, for circulation. So if I have, in this case, using my 1 million example, if I only have 300,000 in circulation and that's in people's hands, and now I got more people to want to buy, at some point we have to expand the population of supply that's out there. It's not a mint in the traditional sense. It is creating, but they were already pre-allocated when the contract was built. In both situations, this is true. Tokens were pre-allocated, simply not made available to the supply until there was a demand for them. Without the demand, you never get close to your max supply. My summary thoughts for you, assuming my theory is correct, my summary to you is the max supply should tell you one thing. It should tell you what's the most I would ever have. It should. I'll get to that in a second. Then you should see off the side, what did they do when this was spun up? Did they burn half? Did they do something else? Then there is a mint type of thing that does potentially allow them to exceed the max supply because they underestimated the demand. This would only be allowed if I had a function that let me do it, because if the contract said, this is my initial set of max supply and this is what it is. The fact that I have not distributed all those tokens yet means I don't have enough demand to eat up what's there. So we're still sitting here. And if that number total supply never gets close to your circulating supply, it means you got a long way to go to eat up what's out there. The missing piece that confuses people is you don't know that the burn supply needs to be considered overall, but you have to have known that. You have to have known and do the math really, that max supply is 1 million, 50% of it was burned, so 500,000. That means I should never see my total supply exceed, in this case, 1 million, because that's the total that would be out there. But I should only see 500,000 that's circulating, right? Because 500,000 is all that's circulating. if I never issued, so let's say it's a million total, and I only issued 300,000 and burned half of it, okay, that's only 150,000, right? So what throws people is, and it's purposely built confusing. I'm not going to go into the tinfoil, but it's purposely built to confuse you to hide whales when they do the upfront burn. It actually should be somewhat of a concern that you're throwing away money long before it starts, because all you're doing is hiding whales. I won't bore you with that. All I'm saying is, summary, Shido does not have a mint function that I see at all in the contract. Volt Emu does not have a mint function that I see at all in the contract. Volt is under the EverOwn control, which means that they couldn't change the contract even if they wanted to without the community's say so. I don't see that Shido's under the EverOwn ecosystem. So if there were a risk of minting at some point, Shido is more likely to do it other than Volt. However, unfortunately, because Shido's getting unreasonable hype on social media, there will not be an extended coverage of Shido until the dust settles. Hopefully that's been helpful to people.